Okay, so up until now, we've been doing all of our transformations with individual tools that you can find here in the tool panel. But I just wanted to show you that we can do most of these same transformations and more using the transform panel. So basically, to use the transform panel, you have to select either a line or a shape or an object first. So I'll go ahead and do that. And to find the transform panel, I'll come up here to window and come down to transform. Now what we're looking at here is some universal items or some universal options that we find for all of our lines, shapes, and objects. So right here, this is kind of our reference points that we could find on our object. So if you can imagine your object surrounded by a square with these quadrants, these are basically the reference point that you're telling the computer that the object needs to transform from. And then over here we have the coordinate points, so your x and y coordinates. You have your width and your height. So again, that's your dimensions on the x-axis and your dimensions on the y-axis. We also have rotation and shear in the same panel. Depending on what kind of object we selected, there's individual properties that are associated just with that type of object. So in this case, it recognizes that we chose a line, so it's giving us line properties. We'll just go ahead and click inside this line properties. It's the line length box, and I'm just going to click inside so the cursor is blinking, and then I'm going to hit the up and the down arrow, and you can see that you can kind of manually size the length of this line. I could also go through and start choosing different angles of rotation. I'll go ahead and set that back to 30 degrees. Let's go ahead and play around with the positioning. So I'm going to click inside here to the X value. And instead of putting in a value, I'm just going to hit the up and the down arrows. And you can see it kind of moves along the x-axis. And this is all dependent on the increments that I set in my preferences. And now I'll play around, move around with the y value. I can go ahead and reset the reference point. Click this black. I'm going to click this part of the quadrant, and it's going to turn that square black. And then I'll come in here and I'll play around. So I'll go ahead and click this part of the reference point quadrant, so in the bottom left hand quarter, and then I'll come in and I will start to adjust the width of this line, and notice how it's adjusting it along that bottom left corner, which is staying fixed. I'll go ahead and adjust the height. So let's go ahead and see how this works with other shapes. So I'll just click outside with the black arrow, and I'll move over to the rectangle and click on the rectangle. Once again, we have all our universal transformations: the position, the height and width, the rotation, and the shear angle. But then we have these new properties. So we have the rectangle width, we have the rectangle height, okay, we have rotation, and then over here we actually have the corner types. It's giving us all four corners. So we could actually come in here and individually adjust each one of these corners, and I could choose the corner type. We could choose chamfer, inverted round, or just a round end. Just kind of play around with this and give each one of these a slightly different corner. I'll give it a little bit of a rotation. I'll manually input -15. And that'll be good for that one. Let's go ahead and see what the ellipse properties are. So if I change this reference point to this bottom right hand corner and I start to adjust the width, we can see that it's adjusting it just from that corner. Let's try giving it a shear angle. That's a little too much. So we can see in here that we can adjust the major and the minor axis of this, so different parts. It's very similar to the rectangle. The other thing that's really cool about this property, so we can actually start to divide this ellipse up like a pie. So if I say move from 0 to 30, we can see that based on the reference point, it's starting to actually open up this ellipse, kind of like a pie chart. So you can kind of go through and experiment with that. We'll try 180 degrees. You can also change the angle that we're starting that pie division on. So it's dividing from one side here and then the other side over here. I think I'll just leave it like that. Alright, the last one is the polygon transformation. So again, all the same properties, but now we have these extra options. So right now we can change the number of sides. We have kind of a scrolling slider that can change the amount of sides that we have for this polygon. We can go all the way up to 20. We'll go ahead and go down. Let's try 6. And I'm going to move it over on the x-axis a little bit. We can also change the radius of the polygon, so this relates to the size. And unlike adjusting the height and the width, this kind of constrains the proportions so that they stay the same. And then this one is controlling the side length. I'll go ahead and take off scale corners just to kind of show what it does when I adjust the side length. So you can see the stroke stays the same when I don't scale the corners. So just so you know, a lot of these options that we've been going over can actually be found up here in the control panel whenever you click on a line or a shape. Just know that you're going to get the full range of options here than what you would through the control panel up here.